Hello, everybody. Um, it's nice to go live again. My name is Mark Turi, and I'm doing a very impromptu live right now. No problem if there's, nobody is around. I just decided to do this like half an hour ago, so it could be that there's nobody will be with me or be here, I should say. Right now. But regardless, I'm very happy to be here. Just gonna try to see here if I can get my camera set up here and a little bit here. I think should be okay. But again, I'm Mark Turi. I just wanted to first thank everyone who has subscribed to my channel. I have now around 80 subscribers to my YouTube channel, which is much larger than I did last time. Even when I had my channel up, last year. I don't remember exactly how many subscribers I had back then, but or how much I had and then didn't have. But it certainly has been quite humbling and very. I've been very happy knowing that a lot of people are interested in what I'm doing, which again I'm very thankful for. So thank you so much for the SBTV community. Thank you so much to Clearwater Chad and Joe DeCeppo and Marilyn Honig and anyone else in the future. If you'd like to have me on, just drop me a message or something, and we'll talk. Um, but that being said, again, 80 subs. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of everyone who's following. Even if I'm the only one who's here live today, don't worry about it. If for some reason there are other people who want to join, type in the chat if you have any questions of anything. And also on the replay, if you're watching this on the replay after the fact, type into the comments if you have any questions. But I wanted to talk actually today about the concept of an echo chamber and also feedback loops or bubbles or something like this. And the reason I wanted to do that was I wanted to compare it to destructive groups, cults, controlling groups, high demand groups, and stuff, especially like Scientology, because ultimately every um, destructive group, every high demand group, every cult, so to speak. One moment, is an echo chamber. But not all echo chambers are destructive. And while it can lead to destructive behavior, echo chambers are, they're pretty popular in today's world, especially with things like news, politics, also religion, even non religion, and stuff like this. So I sort of wanted to just give some thoughts on that. And if anyone has any questions, please, type them out in the chat or type them later in the comments. But when I think of an echo chamber or a bubble or a feedback loop, I basically think of a group of people whom have sort of the same opinions on whatever topic it is: political, religious, scientific, secular, philosophical, economic, social, etc. And they don't really seek out information that contradicts what they, you know, what they already believe. And so the group of people is good in one way because it's supportive of the people who are in it, but dissenting opinion or opinion that is contrarian or otherwise is seen as bad. And there might be some negative emotions, some strong negative emotions towards outsiders who may have other perspectives and thoughts and so forth. And I've experienced a lot of this, like a lot of it over, since leaving Scientology and even in Scientology. So I really want to get into the different spectrums of how echo chambers can begin and how echo chambers have kind of a influence on us. And all I'm going to say here is I am not an expert. I'm not a social psychologist. So a lot of this will just be through my personal experience. Yes, it will be anecdotal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't listen because it might be anecdotal. But these are just thoughts, okay? And things that I've observed through my own personal experience. If you have any other contradictory facts, opinions, perspectives, again, please leave them in the comments or in the chat. The first thing I do want to say is how someone can know that they're in an echo chamber and understanding that there's a spectrum. So when we talk about certain groups, okay, I usually go by the method of Steve Hassan, who of course wrote Combating Called Mind Control and so forth, and has the Freedom of Mind, which is another book he wrote, um, Resource Center, and how when he looks at groups, there's a spectrum between groups that are constructive, benign, and then destructive. And he would put a group like Scientology in destructive because it's the opposite of constructive. It's not accountable, it's abusive, and so forth. Okay. And that, has disconnection. It's got the freeloader bill. It tears up families. It implants a different version of yourself into the followers. You can't really leave. There's deceptive recruiting, so forth. And I kind of want to say that I think echo chambers are similar. I don't really know if there's a constructive echo chamber, but I definitely think that on a scale of benign to negative. So some echo chambers are, you have a small group of friends or a small group of people, and you all sort of believe in something similar. You have very similar experiences. You're quote unquote like minded people. Um, but you're not really harming anybody. You're not really affecting anyone's life. You're not violent or whatever. Then I would say that that's more of a neutral echo chamber. But then there are definitely more destructive echo chambers when all the media that you're listening to or watching is inspiring you to do bad things to people who you consider to be bad. And there's countless examples of this all around. Um, I don't want to give too many specific examples because this is not a political channel. I don't really want to talk too much about politics, but everyone, whether you're on the left, on the right, in the center, or whatever, can think of, other people who aren't you, who've listened to some kind of message from some authority and then, have done stuff or gone and done stuff that's considered, I don't know, unethical or violent or whatnot. So you can all figure that out for yourself on what that is. And I'm sure you can be right about that. Um, you know, but I'm not going to give any specifics necessarily because I don't want to get too political. Um, but it's that kind of an issue where it can be on a spectrum as well, where people are sort of we're social creatures, and a lot of us like mystery in our lives, and we like to know things. And a lot of times, the people that we're with, the people that are sort of supporting us, can also be our worst enemy. And so, how I first look at, very, very first look at echo chambers and how we're in an echo chamber is I always like to ask people, is there something in your life that is not based on your personal experience, something that's like metaphysical, something that's a very big issue that really doesn't have an answer, and you absolutely know what the truth is. So you could get this with conspiracy theories, scientific discoveries, religious teachings. Like, do you absolutely know what God wants from you? Because I don't. Do you absolutely know that God does exist or does not exist? Do you absolutely know what happens when you die? Do you absolutely know, certain who shot JFK? Are you absolutely certain that something that cannot necessarily be proven either way is what you think it is? Most likely, that's a good sign to start that you're in an echo chamber for that one thing. I'm not accusing anybody of saying that if you believe the you know who shot JFK for sure, and it was a conspiracy, for example, that you're in an echo chamber. Looks like there's some good evidence and so forth, but there's also still a lot of questions. You know what I mean? So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. Um, but do you know? And the thing about knowing is there's some things that are unknowable. So are you absolutely 100% certain? Now, let's go to Scientology. In Scientology, we're all absolutely certain that the tech works. Does it? Well, that's subjective. The tech may work for some people in some degree, but it also doesn't really work for a lot of people in a lot of degrees. So, knowing that the tech works can really only persist with other Scientologists repeating the mantra, the tech works, the tech works, the tech works, the tech works, which is when I was on staff, was the number one saying and the number one thing that everybody said. We kept saying the tech works, the tech works, the tech works, the tech works. Every staff meeting we had, that's what we would say. Okay. But again, it's subjective. So maybe the tech works for some people. Maybe it doesn't work for a lot of people. I don't really know. Maybe only parts of it work for some people. I can't say that the tech works 100% of the time if it's applied 100% correctly, because that's kind of unknowable. So let's just kind of start there. So, is there absolutely something that you're 100% certain of that really can't be known? And that might mean that you could be in an echo chamber. And for me, because I want to be accountable here, I don't want to be someone. This is one of the complaints that a lot of people have with skeptics is they seem to know how to criticize other people but can't take up criticism themselves, or they seem to teach other people how to make good arguments, but when they make bad arguments, they get a little emotional. So I look at my life and I think, are there certain things that I know to be true based on my experience in life? And the answer is yes. And I don't think that necessarily means that you aren't in an echo chamber, or if it's true, there's some kind of degree. But there's definitely things that I think that I know, um, particularly when it comes to politics, that probably can't be known. So even I will hold some of these beliefs. And even I have to re examine that from time to time and think to myself, do you really know for sure? And I'm just going to give you guys an example. If you believe in this, again, there's no judgment here, no judgment at all. In fact, it could be true. But at a certain period in my life, I knew that free market economics was the best and only answer to economic progress. Okay. And by free market, I mean, little to no regulations, little to no red tape, etc. And I read a lot of books that confirmed that to me, meaning almost all the books and all the people that I associated with believed the same thing. So it sort of became true for me. Then when I started to stop reading those books and start reading other books, and when I stopped going to certain meetup groups and event groups online as well as in real life, I became a little bit more moderate. And so now I don't know what necessarily to believe. All I know is that I don't know anything about economics, even though I probably spent close to a decade reading all kinds of, free market economic thought. Okay. Again, maybe there's stuff that is in there that's true, but I don't think the whole thing is true. And certainly my certainty about that has dissipated over the years, especially after taking an economics course where I was introduced, and also a history of economics course, whereas I was introduced not only to the Austrian school and the monetary school and the Chicago school, but also to the Keynesian schools and the Marxist school and the social school and the feminist school and the institutional school and on and on and on. And I was like, wow, there's a lot more that to economics than I thought. And so now I'm confused. And I think that's a good thing. It's okay sometimes to be confused. It's okay. So when we look at that, you know, when we're in a group like Scientology, when I was in a group like Scientology, there were so many things that I could have told you that I knew with a, certain with a capital K. And today, I think some of those things are flat out wrong. Or if I knew them, I would say that they're a small k, which means they're subjective. And you wouldn't ever catch a Scientologist say, your experience with the tech is subjective. They think it's purely objective, but it works 100% of the time if it's applied 100% correctly and so forth. And again, I've made these changes. Now, again, I like to tell people, my own shortcomings because, as I mentioned before, I do find a lot of people who can teach a lot, but they can't receive. And I want to be someone who can tell, people who are watching this, okay, here's some things I've observed. And then in my life, this is where I've made mistakes. And that's another thing that is just accountability. I'm not going to tell you I'm the most accountable person in the world. Obviously, there are things that we all keep secrets and are maybe embarrassed by. But the one thing that I really, want to communicate at least is that I'm not going to be someone who says, okay, you know, I'm the best critical thinker. I know everything about religion. I know everything about Scientology. And then as soon as someone asks me or criticizes me, then I'm going to have a, a panic attack, freak out or something, and blame other people and whatever. That's not what I'm going to do. Um, you can criticize me. It's okay. You can question me. It's totally fine too. And if I make bad arguments, please tell me that I'm making bad arguments because I want to know, right? I'm not someone who thinks that, who sits on an ivory tower. At least I'm trying not to be, and call me out if I am. But echo chambers, are something where I, even today, in order to be honest and accountable, can tell you that maybe I'm in an echo chamber. It's certainly a possibility because if I'm giving the subject and teaching the subject on certain characteristics on what it's like to be in an echo chamber, um, I can't say that I'm pure and I'm, echo chamber free. Maybe according to some people, I am in one. And maybe I need some people to tell me that I am and show me. So that's the whole point. That's my whole agenda, so to speak, on it. But I do want to say again, we're going to go back to Steve Hassan and we go back to his spectrum of destructive behavior. We have to look at echo chambers in the same way. And I also believe a lot of times echo chambers and cults are sometimes misused. So there are a lot of fringe political ideologies in the world: libertarianism, Marxism, socialism. If you think of the US third party system, if you're in Canada, we have fringe parties, the UK has fringe parties, animal rights peoples, etc. And some people might call them a cult. Some people might call fringe beliefs a cult. I don't necessarily think that's always a good thing to say. I think that instead of calling certain groups cults, especially fringe groups and ideas and ideologies, it's probably better to call them echo chambers. But it also depends on the person because if you are in a fringe group, you are pretty, I would say, it's pretty well known to you from my personal experience, that you encounter information that contradicts, what you believe in every day. Because, in Canada, we're a very liberal society. We have democracy. So if you're not a liberal Democrat, if you're more libertarian or authoritarian, if you're more right wing or left wing than the Canadian standard, then you're always in conflict. But who do you retreat to in order to find safety? And for me, it was going to these meetup groups and reading these books and coming across sentences in books and being like, yes, 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 this is it. This is it. This is it. More people should read this. And then kind of becoming an evangelist and trying to get people to read, thick economics books because it confirmed my biases when people don't want to do that. So sometimes things that are outside of the mainstream and a certain form of diligence or enthusiasm or zealousness to that may also be something that is in an echo chamber. And again, I always want to stress that, and here I'll put up this, Pete, because you mentioned here, called faith. Faith is a very interesting word. People can have faith in all types of things, which I agree with you. And you can have a strong faith and it not be an echo chamber, by the way. Um, it can be, of course, but not necessarily. I also do want to say that faith is a synonym for belief. If you look up the word faith and belief in the dictionaries, it's the same thing. And we all have beliefs. Why? I don't know. But we all have ideological and philosophical views of the world. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We all have to make sense of why we're here because it's a mystery. My whole thing would be if your faith is leading to more of a destructive path, if it's leading to extremism, if it's leading to extreme closed mindedness, and especially us versus them mentalities, then it's definitely more echo chambered and then destructive. So faith is okay. I think faith is fine. There's some people that say they have faith in God. There's some people that say they have faith in traditions, the political system, humanity, science. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it all depends on where you're going to in order to seek your comfort. And that means, are you just communicating with people who already agree with what you believe in? Do you hear people? Do you want to listen to people who might tell you that you're wrong? And this works on all different levels. I will say that one of my critiques of critical thinkers is what I mentioned before, is the fact that they can always tell you when you're giving a straw man fallacy or a Texas sharpshooter or a red herring or the sunk cost fallacy or any of the dozens of logical fallacies. But the moment they do it, right, and you know that they do it, there's some kind of excuse that you're wrong and they're right. And they can't make bad arguments because they know how to list and repeat every single logical fallacy in the book. Okay, that's one thing, but two things can be true at the same time. So even critical thinkers can be bad arguers. Um, Debating and always being in debate mode, I also believe is another um, form of an echo chamber. Not everything is a debate. Not everything that somebody says is an argument. If you can't drop just for a second what you believe in, and have a conversation with someone on a one-to-one basis, you may also be in an echo chamber. For example, if you're having, you've probably always known these people. You're talking, you're just trying to have a good day. You're trying to talk about things that are fun, sports, the weather, whatever. And then that person that talks about politics or whatever. And this is sometimes called the all roads lead to Rome, right? So everything that you say to the other person, all roads lead back to whatever they believe in. And it's very difficult to have a conversation. I also started to notice this, that I was really in an echo chamber when I was an undergrad, because it was the first time that I had really been in seminars with young students. And, I'm getting older. And as you get older, as some of you may know, we have a tendency to look down on younger people because they tend not to have the same life experience. They tend to have things easier than we did. And, you know, that's not necessarily one for one, but they tend to. And I was in debate mode all the time. Whenever anybody said something, I was debating them. When somebody made a straw man, I said, that's a straw man. That's a this, that's a that. And it became pretty known very quickly that, like, I was kind of a dick. I couldn't have a conversation. You're supposed to have a discussion. All roads were leading back to Rome for me. There were always bad arguments. People talked about their personal experience. I tried to contradict that, which is something you should never do. And a lot of that is a leftover between the awful communication that I was indoctrinated into in Scientology, mixed in with this hyper debate mode of this kind of skeptical, critical thinking type of thing where you just can't let go. You have to be an asshole. You have to be a dick, and doesn't work because younger students today, younger people today, are getting sick of that stuff. They just want to have conversations, and they don't want to be told that they're saying logical fallacies. They don't care about strawman fallacies. They don't care about red herrings or whatever. Like, they don't care. And certainly my communication and their communication were so way off that I wasn't really able to express myself. And of course, what happens? You get angry. And when you get angry, there's no communication. So these are the different types of echo chambers and feedback loops that I've experienced, since leaving Scientology. There's others. If we talk about religious groups, okay, I'm fine for religious groups. I belong to a religious group or a religious congregation. Um, but they can predicate a lot of that too. Um, I very strongly believe in evolution. I don't believe in creationism. I think that there's better evidence for evolution. Hopefully, that's not controversial. And I don't lose any subs because I just got to 80 subs. If you do believe in creationism, that's fine. I respect you as an individual. We might disagree on that belief, but the only way that something like creationism can be persistent with so many people is in an echo chamber or in a feedback loop because the evidence is very, very strong the other way. And, you know, there's nothing that says you can't be religious and believe in evolution. Anyone that says that doesn't understand science, doesn't understand evolution, does not understand religion. So it's totally fine. And I know that a lot of people who are creationists, because I have some friends who were when I was growing up, believe that, you're either one or the other. I don't, you know. I believe in that middle ground. Um, how did dictators grab a hold of large groups of people and convince them to do horrible things? They limit the media that they consume and they only print propaganda. And what does propaganda do? Propaganda is a strong fixture of an echo chamber because imagine if all you're doing is watching movies, reading books, and so forth, and the enemy is always the enemy. One group of people is always lesser than, they're dehumanized. Um, you can study propaganda from the Soviet times to the Nazi times, even to pro-war propaganda, propaganda posters in the United States, Canada, Great Britain, etc., in World War One and Two, which of course most people would say, well, especially World War Two, needed to be fought. But there were some very racist caricatures of the Japanese on a lot of these posters. So it was useful at the time, and we can debate that. But, you know, that is still part of an echo chamber. And there is still a spectrum because we can debate the merits of that. We could debate the merits of, well, more soldiers signed up. Yes, okay, it's a racist caricature, but, and we can have those conversations, I think, and especially as a historian, I do. But we can still also say it kind of made things into an echo chamber. Nations can be echo chambers. Politics can be like that. And really, what it is it's demonizing another group. I know that in the United States right now, it's very hard politically. I have my choice on who I would vote for if I were an American citizen, because I think the other person is not a good person. Um, and I think that the people who follow that person are in an echo chamber. They are in a feedback loop. Um, and that's just my opinion. Okay, maybe some of you will agree or disagree. Fine, we can have that conversation. But I definitely think that when certain things have happened in the United States and US politics over the past couple of years, it's definitely been because of echo chamber like thinking, in which the internet and social media now literally make it so much easier for people to be in echo chambers and to stay in those echo chambers. For example, I'm sure most of us who are probably older, at least than 30 or 40, would remember a time when we didn't have social media. And maybe some of you are old enough to remember when there wasn't internet. I do. I remember when there was no internet. I remember when we did not have social media because I was a teenager when my family got the internet. So, and that was in the late '90s, early 2000s. So, all of a sudden, if you wanted a specific hobby, right? You could never find anyone who wanted to do a very specific hobby because how would you know before the internet, right? You'd have to look in the yellow pages or you'd have to ask a person, you'd have to read the newspaper, maybe there'd be a gathering, of something very specific like bird watching or something. How did people get together with bird watching? Well, they had a neighborhood thing, people had flyers or whatnot. But now there's so specific niches that are tailored to us that, I'm a Star Trek fan, but if I enjoy a specific series, right, there's a fan base. If I enjoy a specific character, there's a fan base. If I enjoy a specific species, there's a fan base. And it's like so specific. And there are clubs designed for that specificity. The good thing is more people with more specific interests are finding each other. But of course, it breeds more into the echo chamber because you probably already agree with those people. And again, that's an example of something that's not destructive. Going to a place where you have a certain fan base, a certain skill, a certain hobby, and you all enjoy it is kind of like an echo chamber because you all enjoy doing that thing. You all agree that that thing is good and you all enjoy doing it, but you're not doing anything horrible. Of course, there are exceptions to this when it comes to violent thinking and stuff like this, but that's the exception. And so, I guess my sort of takeaway for today is not only to look at uh, echo chambers and feedback loops and so forth on a spectrum, but it's always good to evaluate like who are the people that I'm communicating with? Am I in an echo chamber? A soft answer would be yes. If you are in an extreme echo chamber, then there's a few things, again, that you can do to ease it. Now, again, you could be in an echo chamber where you're just going to church and you like going to church, or you go to a religious organization, you like it, or you go to a meetup group and you like it. There's nothing wrong with those things, but you could get sometimes too involved without any pushback. So if you're in a group and there's a lot of like-minded people and so forth, but you find yourself maybe spending a little bit more time and you're kind of worried, are all my friends part of this group? What happens if I leave that group? Sometimes even in echo chambers, like in these meetup groups, I'm really not friends with anybody from the past 10 plus years because I left the meetup groups. And when I left the meetup groups, nobody wanted to be friends with me because I wasn't into economics or skepticism or whatever. So, what would happen if you left? And again, I'm not talking in terms of destructive cults here. I'm just talking, certain meetup groups or certain things like this. Would you still have those friends? Because if you don't, then the only reason they're friends with you is because you have an interest in whatever they have an interest in. And usually, yeah, you should have friends that have interests with you, of course, but that shouldn't be the only thing. The next is if you take some time off, right? Does your extreme or fringe belief, do you start to become a little bit more mellow, right? Do you start to become more curious about other things? That could mean that you're in an echo chamber because sometimes echo chambers they stint your curiosity. I mean, why would you be curious about something if you really know that something is true with a capital T and that you know it with a capital H? There's no need to be curious. So if you just step away voluntarily, right, from whatever it is, well, you start to become extremely interested in something else. And then if you do that, and that thing is the opposite of what your echo chamber is saying, will they come with you? And that's how you can tell if you have good friends versus fair weather friends, right? Fair weather friends will only be with you a short period of time for status or whatever. And then as soon as you change, they're not going to change with you. The other thing is, again, I really want to always emphasize this is because things are on a spectrum, I can't give any broad generalities. I can't say, okay, this is an echo chamber, this is an echo chamber, or whatever. I'm just trying to give some thoughts um, that I've had over the past little while on what constitutes a destructive group and an echo chamber. Ultimately, even if you are in an echo chamber that's not a destructive cult or group, uh, you're not going to be deceptively recruited. It's likely that you're going to be the one who reaches out to the people. And if you leave, nothing's going to happen. So it's not that extreme, okay? Because there is kind of a line between those two, but I think the line is pretty definite. So again, if for any reason something I've said just doesn't materialize to you or it doesn't seem like you've connected to it, okay. My only hope is that if somebody is in kind of a feedback loop, just do a couple things that I've said, just as an experiment. But ultimately, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it, and that's okay too. So the other thing would just be again, if you know that you're sort of in a group, um, take a little time away. Are the people that you're interacting with, if you changed, would they change with you? And little things like this. Remember that meetup groups and so forth can be a very good way to make friends, but it can also be a really good way to make fair weather friends whom you might see every once in a while, but ultimately you're only going to see them at the meetup group or etc. So people that have more experience than me on this, chime in if you'd like. Um, just a bit of advice. And I'm hoping that maybe that was helpful. Um, Again, this was impromptu. I just started the stream 35 minutes before I went to air, so not even an hour ago. So if anyone has any comments, if anyone has any questions, any concerns, any of your own personal experience, again, please make comments. I will come to them and look at them. Other than that, um, I think that the intention of these echo chambers or intentions of meeting like-minded individuals is good, because if somebody has a specific interest, if you have a meetup group that's a spiritual community or a skeptics community or whatever, it's not a bad thing intentively, but if it becomes obsessive, if it becomes the only thing that you're socializing, then of course, like everything, there's a line and the line can be crossed and so forth. So for me, I did find ultimately only looking for non or for like-minded people, I should say, and only like-minded people was not as constructive as trying to just be friends with everybody, whether or not they agreed with me or not. And when I was in my more antagonistic, closed off debate mode, I definitely was in an echo chamber and I definitely was acting that out. And so there are some negative behaviors that you can pick up. So those are just things to analyze for yourself. Again, I hope they've been helpful. Um, because when I left Scientology, and this is an axiom, to borrow a word from Hubbard, this is an axiom is when you leave a group like Scientology, when you enter a group like Scientology, you're very vulnerable. And when you leave a group, you are also vulnerable. And I think that my vulnerability, I wasn't really seeking good therapeutic answers. And so getting involved in fringe ideas and more echo chambers, which I think at least for 7+ more years, in addition to the 3 years I was in Scientology, was just not helpful. Therapy would have helped me, getting a new group of friends or the friends that I had already, and spending more time, having a better relationship with them rather than just being obsessed with these kinds of meetup groups and fringe groups and so forth is part of a psychology and was part of my psychology. And again, it really wasn't until I was an undergrad and really isn't until the past couple of years that I've been able to stop, going to certain groups and just feeling better about myself. All of this, as I said, and I'll say it one last time, is personal experience. So I hope that it's been helpful in some way. Please let me know if it has or hasn't. Please let me know if there's groups out there that you have any concerns with. Um, and, generally speaking, I say if it's very specific, it could be considered an echo chamber. Who knows, though? A lot of it is also just my opinion, but I definitely know a couple groups that I was in over Meetup in Toronto from like 2011 until 2021 were definitely echo chambers. They were not violent, you know, they were not extremist. It's just discourse was very closed off, and it became very disillusioning to be in that group and try to get people to open up and to look at different viewpoints. So that is my conclusion for today. I want to thank everyone. I've seen up to about 3, 4 people popped on and off. If you're watching this on replay, please give it a like. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And once again, I want to thank everyone who has subscribed already and will subscribe in the future if you're watching this. I'm at 80 subs right now, and that is wonderful. I didn't think that I would even have that many. So I will probably do more of these lives when things come to mind. I will also let you guys know that I will probably do more subs where there's at least several hours, if not 24 hours or longer, for scheduling, just because right now it was short notice and we've only had a few viewers on and off, which again I do appreciate. But the Q&A I did last time had quite a bit more, and so I'd love to have more audience interaction, and that usually tends to do pretty well on the weekends. So I'm hoping that I can do one on the weekend, and we can do a Q&A, or I can talk about different things. Let me know what you'd like to see for the channel. Let me know what you'd like to see. And hey, Clearwater Chad, I appreciate you being on here. I'm just wrapping up. So thank you so much. We got to do a Pete Griff showdown soon. And yeah, if you're just tuning in, I'm just about to stop my stream and end my stream. Go back and let me know what you think. Thank you, everybody. Have a very good evening, a very good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. And I will see you soon. Thank you.